Stop what you're doing, because Rick Lagina may have just uncovered the biggest secret in Oak Island history. In the Season 13 finale, a shocking discovery appears to turn the entire mystery upside down. And if what Rick found is real, everything we believed about Oak Island could be wrong. We're talking about hidden evidence, a twist no one predicted, and a revelation so massive some fans think the treasure has finally been found. But here's the crazy part. This discovery may point to something far bigger than treasure. And wait until you see what happened in the final moments of the episode, because it left Rick completely stunned. Was this the breakthrough they've spent decades chasing, or did they uncover something they were never meant to find? Stay with me, because this gets insane. The island that fights back. The documented history of Oak Island excavation begins in 1795 when a teenager named Daniel McGinnis discovered a circular depression on the island's surface and began digging. Within feet, he hit a platform of oak logs. The shaft was abandoned and re-entered by organized expeditions over the following decades. Each attempt ended the same way, in flooding, collapse, and failure. 6 men have died in Oak Island's pursuit across 229 years of recorded excavation history. The flood tunnels, channels connecting the Money Pit Zone to the ocean, have been documented since the 1800s. Every serious engineering analysis of the site has confirmed the same structural reality. Something or someone built a hydraulic system designed to defeat downward excavation. Water floods in from the sea the moment any dig reaches a critical depth. Shafts collapse, equipment disappears, fortunes drain. The scale of that financial loss across 2 centuries is almost impossible to comprehend. By the mid-1800s, the Onslow and Truro companies had already burned through the equivalent of millions of modern dollars. The Oak Island Association, the Halifax Company, and later the Oak Island El Dorado Company followed, each entering with new tools, new theories, and fresh capital, each leaving with nothing. Franklin Roosevelt invested in an Oak Island company during the 1900s and followed its progress for decades. The whole island defeated every single one of them. For most of that history, the prevailing assumption has been that the flood tunnels exist to protect a vault directly below the money pit. The logic is straightforward. Dig deep enough, solve the water problem, and reach whatever was placed there. Every expedition from 1795 through Season 12 has operated inside that vertical framework. Down is the direction. The money pit is the target. Season 13 changes the angle of attack, not because the evidence runs out, but because what surfaces in the finale points somewhere no previous campaign has seriously excavated. Not down, sideways. Not toward the money pit at all, but toward the shoreline, a section of the island that has been treated for over 2 centuries as a backdrop rather than a destination. The question Season 13 forces is the one that every previous excavation missed. What if the money pit was designed to make searchers dig in the wrong direction? And what if it worked precisely as intended? For 229 years, the signal beneath the shoreline. Based on what sources close to Season 13 production describe, the episode's central discovery does not originate at the money pit. It originates at the water's edge, a section of shoreline that has not been the primary focus of any previous Oak Island excavation campaign. According to these accounts, Gary Drayton's metal detector registers a signal from this area that does not match the surface-level anomalies cataloged in previous seasons. Deeper, heavier, resonant in a way that suggests mass rather than scattered metallic debris. And beneath it, a void, empty space where the subsurface should be solid. That detail alone is significant. Oak Island's subsurface has been mapped, drilled, and probed across seasons of work. An undocumented void at the shoreline, not in the money pit zone, not in the swamp, but at the water's edge, means something that has not appeared on any previous survey. Either it was missed or it was always there, and every previous campaign was looking in the wrong place to find it. Excavation into the shoreline zone reportedly strikes timber. The wood does not respond the way timber responds when it has simply been buried in earth. Sources describe the sound as hollow, a resonance suggesting enclosed space rather than packed sediment below. If that account is accurate, the timber is structural. It was placed there as part of something built, not deposited, not driftwood, but intent. What reportedly follows is the detail that separates this discovery from every previous Oak Island find. When the structure is breached, there is no flood. For a site where every major excavation has ended in catastrophic inundation, where the flood system has defeated every serious attempt for 229 years, the absence of water at the moment of breach is itself the most significant data point of the season. The hydraulic system that has protected this island for centuries does not trigger, which means one of two things. Either the system failed at this specific location, or this location was designed to be outside the system's reach. And given the engineering sophistication that the rest of the island's subsurface demonstrates, failure seems like the less likely explanation. Inside the chamber, sources report the walls carry carved tool marks, not the scratches of rushed excavation, but the deliberate work of craftsmen operating with time and intent. Marks made not in hours, but across seasons of work, the kind of tool signatures that belong to a tradition of underground construction that was already centuries old when this island was being built into. The precision is what stands out. These are not the marks of people digging quickly and leaving. They are the marks of people building something meant to last. The sensory detail that sources return to consistently is not the timber, not the carved walls, but the smell. Stale air, ancient wood, the specific atmospheric quality of a sealed space that has not exchanged atmosphere with the outside world in a very long time. That detail, if accurate, carries structural meaning. Sealed spaces smell that way because they are intact. Whatever was built here held against 6 centuries of tidal pressure, geological shift, and searcher activity above it. It held because whoever built it knew exactly how to make it hold. What the geology did next, the near-catastrophic event that reportedly strikes the Money Pit Zone during Season 13 filming, is not a subplot. It is the mechanism by which the season's most important physical evidence is exposed, and it nearly ends the excavation permanently. Oak Island's subsurface geology is composed of limestone and gypsum layers that have been dissolving slowly for thousands of years. This karst geology exists across Nova Scotia, but the specific conditions of this island, combined with the relentless drilling and excavation pressure of 229 years of searcher activity, have accelerated the dissolution in ways that are difficult to fully predict or model. Every shaft sunk, every borehole drilled, every excavation campaign has incrementally weakened the structural integrity of the subsurface network. The rock and sediment beneath Oak Island is not the same as it was in 1795. It has been compromised layer by layer, season by season. At depth, a single collapse does not remain local. It propagates, destabilizing adjacent tunnels, flooding voids, triggering secondary failures in sections of the system that appeared stable. It destroys months of log data in seconds and can render previously mapped zones impossible to re-enter safely. The engineering challenge is not just excavating downward. It is doing so without triggering a cascade failure in a subsurface system that has been geologically weakened to an unknown degree. What sources close to production describe as a collapse event in the Money Pit Zone during Season 13 filming, serious enough in scope to trigger a stop work order from local authorities and a temporary closure of the entire Money Pit area. The island, the geology itself, shuts the operation down. Not weather, not budget, not a decision made in the war room. The ground. The details of individual positioning and movement during the collapse are not verifiable from available evidence, and this breakdown does not reconstruct them. What can be stated is the operational and evidentiary consequence. The collapse exposed a debris layer beneath the Money Pit Zone that had never been previously documented. From that newly exposed layer, timber samples were recovered. The wood does not carry the tool signatures of 1800s excavation campaigns. It is not searcher construction. It is not colonial-era material. The tool marks on the recovered samples are inconsistent with anything placed on this island within the last 4 centuries. The wood itself is different. Its density, its preservation state, the nature of the marks cut into it. Something that was sealed beneath the surface of the Money Pit Zone for a very long time has just been cracked open. and what is inside it does not belong to any chapter of Oak Island history that anyone has previously written. That is when carbon dating becomes the central story of the season. What the dating says. Carbon dating of the recovered timber reportedly places its construction between 1350 and 1400 AD. Let that number settle. 1350 to 1400. The 100 Years' War between England and France is still being fought. The Black Death has killed roughly a third of Europe's population within living memory. Christopher Columbus has not yet been born. The Americas, as far as any documented European record is concerned, do not exist, and someone is on Oak Island building underground. To understand why that date range is the biggest twist in Oak Island history, it is necessary to be precise about what it eliminates from consideration. It eliminates the pirate era entirely. The golden age of Caribbean and Atlantic piracy peaked between approximately 1680 and 1730, more than 3 centuries after the timber was placed. William Kidd, executed in 1701, Edward Teach, killed in 1718. Every pirate candidate ever proposed as Oak Island's original builders is eliminated by a medieval construction date. Pirates did not build this. It eliminates the colonial era. The earliest documented permanent European settlement in Nova Scotia, Port Royal, was established in 1605. The timber reportedly predates that settlement by more than 2 centuries. The Acadians, the British colonial administration, the French, none of them were in Nova Scotia in 1350. No colonial-era European population was in a position to construct what the shoreline evidence appears to describe. It eliminates standard searcher construction. Every documented Oak Island excavation from 1795 onward postdates the carbon dating range by a minimum of 350 years. The timber recovered from the newly exposed debris layer was not placed by any previous search campaign. What the 1350 to 1400 date range rules in is specific, and its implications are significant. A human presence on Oak Island more than a century before Columbus, operating with purpose-built underground construction tools, capable of engineering a hydraulic system sophisticated enough to remain partially functional 6 centuries later. This was not a brief landfall or an accidental arrival. The scale and precision of what the evidence describes requires a planned, resourced, coordinated operation. One that understood the geological and tidal conditions of the site well enough to engineer around them. One that came here knowing what it was going to build. Among the materials reportedly recovered from the debris layer are excavation instruments whose design is consistent with medieval European construction practice, specifically with tool styles documented in France and Scotland during the 13th and 14th centuries, not improvised digging equipment, improvised from whatever was available on a Nova Scotia shoreline. Designed instruments brought across an ocean, built for structured underground work. The tools of a professional operation. If these accounts are accurate, the builders who worked beneath Oak Island's shoreline in the 1300s were not exploring. They arrived with a blueprint. They knew what they were building, where they were building it, and exactly how long they needed it to last. What they were actually building, if the carbon dating holds, Oak Island was never about treasure in any conventional sense of the word. It was about protection. Specifically, the kind of protection that requires crossing an ocean, identifying and surveying a geologically suitable site, engineering a multi-component hydraulic system from scratch, and constructing a sealed underground structure built to endure not for years or decades, but for centuries. That is not the behavior of treasure hunters or pirates. That is institutional behavior. An organization with deep resources, advanced technical knowledge, and a reason to make something disappear from the historical record permanently. An organization protecting something it considered irreplaceable. The profile fits one documented historical candidate more coherently than any other. The Knights Templar were formally dissolved by papal decree in 1312 following years of persecution orchestrated by Philip IV of France. The order's leadership was arrested en masse in 1307 on charges of heresy, charges that most modern historians regard as politically motivated, designed to allow the French crown to seize Templar assets and eliminate a financial power that had grown inconveniently independent. The Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, was burned at the stake in 1314. Both Philip IV and Pope Clement V were dead within the year. What happened to the order's accumulated wealth, its financial holdings, its libraries, its most significant protected artifacts after 1312 has never been fully accounted for in the historical record. This is a documented historical gap that serious scholars have studied for centuries. When the Templar properties across Europe were seized, inventories were taken. Those inventories are incomplete. The Paris Temple was found to contain far less than expected. The Templar fleet, documented at the port of La Rochelle in the weeks before the arrests, vanished. Its cargo and destination were never officially recorded. The Templar treasury did not appear in any European royal inventory following the dissolution. It was not recovered. Where it went remains genuinely unresolved. The Templars were master builders. The architectural and engineering record they left across 2 centuries of operation in Europe and the Holy Land is extensive and technically documented. Cathedrals, fortresses, harbors, hydraulic systems demonstrating working knowledge of geology, water pressure, and structural mechanics at a level that challenged engineers studying them centuries later. The Templar network of preceptories across Europe gave the order access to geological surveys, building materials, skilled craftsmen, and the logistical infrastructure to mount a maritime expedition to a remote North Atlantic island without drawing attention. A system designed to interact with ocean tides is not accidental engineering. It requires precise knowledge of tidal behavior, geological pressure, hydraulic mechanics, and the specific interaction between coastal geology and seawater infiltration. These are disciplines the Templar Order had refined across generations of construction in the Mediterranean and Northern Europe. An order that built and maintained the infrastructure of the Crusader states, managing ports, fortifications, and water systems across hostile terrain for nearly 2 centuries, would have possessed exactly the expertise required to design what Oak Island's subsurface system demonstrates. The flood tunnels in this framework were not built to protect the money pit. They were built to protect what was hidden beneath the shoreline and to ensure that the money pit, the most visible and obvious excavation target on the island, would absorb every search campaign and defeat it. Searchers digging downward would hit water, collapse, and fail every time. They would never think to look sideways toward the shoreline. The system was designed so that the money pit looked like the answer because the money pit was built to be the wrong answer. The mystery is no longer vertical. It becomes lateral, a connected underground system stretching between the swamp, the shoreline, and the money pit, linked in ways that suggest deliberate design rather than random geological formation. The swamp, the money pit, and the shoreline chamber are not 3 separate features. Based on the Season 13 evidence, they appear to be 3 components of a single integrated structure, a system with one purpose, built in the 1300s by people who understood exactly what they were protecting and exactly how long they needed it protected. The money pit was the decoy, the shoreline was the vault, and the flood system connecting them was the lock. Calibrated to the tidal behavior of this specific Nova Scotia coastline, functional for over 6 centuries and decisive in defeating every excavation attempt for 229 years. If this is the kind of deep dive analysis you come back for, subscribe and hit the bell. The next Oak Island breakdown drops soon, and what Season 14 will have to excavate is unlike anything the show has faced before.